During our family photo shoot, my mother whispered, "Let's take a photo with only the real grandchildren." My brothers and sisters moved slightly, pushing my son out of the frame. His smile instantly disappeared. But my fiancé stepped forward, raised his glass, and said something that made my parents turn pale. My mother erased my son from a family photo like he was an editing mistake. We were lined up in my parents' backyard for their 40th anniversary picture. My dad had rented a photographer. My mom had coordinated outfits weeks in advance. My brothers Jason and Luke stood with their wives. My sister Emily kept fixing her daughter's bow. It looked perfect from the outside. Caleb was standing in front of me, smiling so hard his cheeks were red. He had practiced that smile in the car. Then my mother leaned toward the photographer and said, quietly but clearly enough for all of us to hear, "Let's take one with only the real grandchildren." The words hung there. Jason shifted. Luke gently guided his son forward. Emily moved closer to the center with her kids. It was subtle, almost choreographed. Caleb ended up on the edge of the frame without anyone directly touching him. He looked up at me, confused, waiting for me to fix it. No one said anything. For context, Caleb is from my first marriage. His father left when Caleb was 2. Mark has been in his life since he was 4. Mark teaches him how to ride a bike, helps with homework, and never misses a school play. Caleb calls him dad in private but still uses Mark in front of my parents because he once overheard my mother say, "Let's not confuse him." I started to step forward, but my mom added, "Just one photo. It's important to have one with the biological grandchildren." Biological. Caleb's smile disappeared. Not dramatically. Just gone. Mark set his drink down. He walked forward, picked Caleb up without saying a word, and stood in the middle of the group. Caleb wrapped his arms around his neck like he wasn't sure what was happening but knew he was safe. My mother's jaw tightened. "Mark, this isn't personal." Mark raised his glass slightly. "Then let's keep it honest." My dad shifted uncomfortably. "Let's not do this today." Mark didn't look at him. He looked at my mother. "You want a picture with only the real grandchildren? We can do that. But first maybe we should define real." Silence. Jason frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Mark finally looked at my father. "Does everyone here know the whole story? Or are we still pretending?" I felt my stomach drop. My father's face went pale in a way I had never seen before. He stared at Mark like he was holding a loaded weapon. "Mark," I whispered because suddenly I understood. Not fully, but enough. Years ago when I was 16 there had been a rumor. Something about my dad and my Aunt Linda. My mom shut it down instantly. We never talked about it again. I convinced myself it was gossip. Mark cleared his throat. "Because if we're talking about biological lines we should probably acknowledge that Jason and Emily might want to sit this one out too." Emily's head snapped toward him. "Excuse me." My dad finally spoke. "That's enough." But it wasn't. Mark continued calmly, "I don't like secrets. And I don't like watching a 7-year-old get pushed aside because of a word." My mother's voice dropped. "You are out of line." Mark looked at her evenly. "No. You were." The photographer slowly lowered his camera. Caleb buried his face in Mark's shoulder. And that was the exact second I realized 2 things at once. First, my parents had just tried to humiliate my child in public. Second, Mark knew something about my family that I didn't. And whatever it was big enough to make my father afraid. Nobody moved. The backyard suddenly felt too small. Too quiet. Even the photographer looked like he regretted booking the job. Emily laughed, but it sounded forced. "Hey, seriously. What is this about?" Mark didn't answer her. He looked at my dad. "You want to tell them or should I?" My father's lips pressed into a thin line. "This is not the place." My mother stepped in front of him. "You don't get to come into this family and start throwing accusations." Mark finally turned to her. "I'm not throwing anything. I'm asking for consistency. If Caleb isn't real because of DNA, then let's be consistent about everyone's DNA." Jason looked irritated. "Diana, what is he talking about?" I didn't know. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely think. "Mark," I said quietly, "what do you mean?" He hesitated for the first time. Not uncertain. Just careful. Then he looked at me and I knew this wasn't impulsive. He had been sitting on this. 3 months ago, he said, "Your mom asked me to sign something." My mother's face changed. "What?" I asked. She invited me to lunch. Just the two of us. Said she wanted to welcome me properly before the wedding. I remembered that lunch. She told me it went wonderfully. Mark continued. She slid a paper across the table. A legal document. Basically saying that if anything ever happened between us, I would not seek visitation or parental rights to Caleb. The words didn't register at first. She said she was protecting her grandson. Caleb tightened his grip around Mark's neck. My stomach dropped. You never told me. I wanted to handle it calmly, he said. I told her I wasn't signing anything that treated Caleb like temporary family. My mother snapped. I was being practical. Practical, Mark repeated. By planning his exit strategy? Jason looked confused. Mom, is that true? It's not what it sounds like, she said quickly. I was thinking ahead. Diana has already been through one divorce. Mark shook his head. That wasn't the worst part. I felt cold. She also mentioned something else. She said, and I'm quoting, after what happened with Linda, we can't afford another child that isn't fully ours. Every head turned toward Aunt Linda, who had gone completely still. Emily frowned. What happened with Linda? My father finally lost his composure. That's enough. Mark didn't raise his voice. You're right. It is enough. Because if Caleb isn't real family, then we should talk about which grandchildren are. Jason's face shifted from irritation to something closer to alarm. Dad. Linda looked at the ground. My mother stepped forward. You have no proof. You're repeating something I said out of context. Mark looked at my father again. Then deny it. The silence was deafening. Jason's eyes slowly moved between Linda and Dad. Emily whispered, no. My father didn't speak. And in that quiet, something cracked wide open. I felt like I was watching strangers instead of my family. Mark gently set Caleb down but kept a hand on his shoulder. You don't get to decide who is real based on blood, he said. Especially not in this family. Jason's voice was tight. Dad. Say something. But my father just stared at the ground. And that was the moment we all understood that this wasn't just about a photo. It was about a secret that had been buried for decades. And my mother had just tried to protect it by humiliating a child. Jason was the first to snap. What is he implying? He asked, looking directly at my dad now. My father still wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. Emily turned to Aunt Linda. Why is he saying your name? Linda looked like she wanted to disappear. This isn't how this was supposed to come out. That sentence was enough. Jason took a step back. Come out. My mother tried to regain control. Everyone is overreacting. Mark misunderstood something I said. Mark didn't argue. He just pulled his phone out of his pocket. I don't like secrets, he repeated. And I don't like being lied to. My stomach tightened. Mark, what did you do? He glanced at me. I didn't trust the way that lunch felt. So I recorded it. The air left my lungs. My mother's face went white. You recorded me? You handed me a legal document about my son, he said evenly. Yes. Jason held out his hand. Play it. My dad finally spoke. No. But Mark already had. It wasn't loud, but in that silence, every word carried. My mother's voice came through clearly. After what happened with Linda and your father, we cannot afford another situation where a child grows up thinking he belongs when biologically he does not. There was a sharp inhale somewhere behind me. The recording continued. Jason doesn't know and he never will. It would destroy him. Emily either. That was a mistake that nearly tore this family apart once. The audio stopped. No one needed more. Jason stared at my dad like he had never seen him before. What is she talking about? Emily's eyes were filling with tears. Dad. Linda finally looked up. It was a long time ago. Jason's voice cracked. What was? Linda swallowed. Your father and I, we were young. It was before he married your mother. Jason shook his head. So what? Linda closed her eyes. So I got pregnant. Silence again. My father looked exhausted. We agreed never to talk about it. Jason's breathing became uneven. Talk about what? Linda looked straight at him. About you. Felt like the ground shifted. Jason actually laughed once like his brain rejected the words. That's not funny. It's not a joke, Linda said. My mother stepped in quickly. Your father raised you. He is your father. Jason looked between them. But biologically, No one answered. Emily backed up slowly as if distance could change the truth. So, Linda nodded faintly. You are your mother's. Jason is mine. My head was spinning. My mother had spent decades drawing lines around who was real and who was not. And the entire time the lines were crooked. Jason looked at me, then at Caleb, then back at our parents. So today, he said slowly, you tried to push a 7-year-old out of a picture because he isn't biologically connected. But I am standing here because of the same thing you're ashamed of. My father still didn't answer. Mark stepped forward slightly, not aggressive, just steady. That's why we're done pretending. Caleb clung to my leg now, confused by everything but sensing it was serious. My mother's voice was barely audible. This should have stayed buried. Mark looked at her. So should the idea that love depends on DNA. And that was when I realized something else. My parents were not upset because the secret came out. They were upset because they lost control of the narrative. And if they were capable of rewriting Jason's entire identity for decades, what chance did Caleb ever have of being accepted? That thought settled heavily in my chest. Because this was no longer about one photo. It was about whether I would allow my son to grow up inside a family that measured worth in blood. The party ended without anyone officially ending it. People just started leaving. The photographer packed up quietly. My cousins avoided eye contact. Jason walked straight past my parents and out the side gate. Emily followed him. Aunt Linda sat down in one of the white folding chairs and stared at nothing. My mother kept saying, "We will talk about this privately," but no one responded. Mark didn't say another word. He just took Caleb's hand and waited for me. The drive home was silent except for Caleb asking one question. Mom, am I not real? I felt something inside me break. You are the most real thing in my life, I told him. He nodded slowly like he was storing that away for later. When we got home and Caleb went to his room, I turned to Mark. You recorded my mother. Yes. You've been sitting on this for 3 months. Yes. And you were going to let it go? He shook his head. I was waiting to see if she would treat Caleb differently in public. I didn't want to blow up your family over a private conversation if she could correct herself. She didn't, I said. No. I sat down at the kitchen table. My phone was already lighting up. That. Mom again. I ignored them. Mark sat across from me. Diana, I need to be clear about something. I knew what was coming before he said it. I won't raise Caleb around people who see him as conditional. They're my parents, I said automatically. And he's your son. That landed harder. They will apologize, I said, but it sounded weak even to me. An apology doesn't change how they think, he replied. Your mother tried to legally prepare for my removal from his life. She assumed I would eventually leave. That tells you everything. My phone buzzed again. A text this time. From Mom. You let him humiliate this family. Call me immediately. No mention of Caleb. No concern about what had happened. Just reputation. Mark looked at me carefully. If we get married, Caleb becomes my son legally. I want to adopt him. I blinked. You never pushed for that. I didn't want to pressure you. But today made it clear. I want him protected. Not tolerated. That word hit me. Tolerated. That was exactly how my parents treated him. Polite distance. Holiday gifts. No sleepovers without one of the other grandchildren present. Always slightly separate. My phone rang again. I finally answered. What you allowed today was unforgivable. My mother started immediately. Unforgivable? I asked. You told a photographer my son wasn't real. You're overreacting. He heard you. Silence for a second. That wasn't my intention. But it was your belief. She exhaled sharply. You are choosing a man over your family. I looked at Mark, who was standing in the kitchen doorway now, not listening in but close enough. You chose blood over love, I said. Long before today. You don't understand the complexity of adult decisions. No, I said. I understand exactly what you did. You buried one truth to protect your image. And today you tried to bury my son to protect the same thing. Her tone changed. Softer now. Diana, don't do something dramatic. Caleb needs grandparents. Grandparents who see him as temporary? You're being emotional. That word did it. For years that was how she dismissed me. Mark didn't interrupt. He didn't need to. I ended the call without saying goodbye. Then I looked at him. If I choose you, I said quietly, there's no going back. He didn't rush me. I'm not asking you to choose me. I'm asking you to choose the environment Caleb grows up in. The phone buzzed again. This time it was Dad. I didn't answer. Because for the first time in my life I wasn't afraid of disappointing them. I was afraid of becoming them. The next morning my parents showed up without calling. Caleb was at the kitchen table. Mark looked at me and I nodded for him to take Caleb to his room before opening the door. My mother walked in like nothing had happened. We're not letting yesterday ruin this family, she said. It already did, I replied. My father avoided eye contact. We came to see Caleb. Mark stepped beside me. Not happening. My mother looked at him. You don't decide that. I do if you treat him like he doesn't belong. He turned to me. Diana, be reasonable. Reasonable would have been not calling him unreal. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. She tried another angle. You're going to cut us off over one word? No, I said. Over what that word revealed. Silence. Mark spoke calmly. I'm starting the adoption process. My father frowned. That's unnecessary. It's permanent, I said. Like he is. My mother's face hardened. If you do that, don't expect us to play along. I'm not asking you to play along. I'm asking you to accept him. Fully. She looked at me for a long moment. So you're choosing him? Yes, I said. I am. They waited for me to take it back. I didn't. When I closed the door I knew something had ended. And this time it wasn't just a photo. Jason called me that night. Not to yell. Not to argue. Just to say, I did a DNA test. I didn't know what to say. I always felt like something was off, he admitted. Not with Dad. Mom. Like she overcompensated. The results hadn't even come back yet, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. Emily stopped speaking to our parents completely. Aunt Linda moved out of state within a month. My father tried calling me twice after that day. My mother never apologized. She only sent messages about how families forgive and forget. Mark filed the adoption papers quietly. No announcement. No drama. The day Caleb signed the form with his small, careful handwriting, he looked up at Mark and said, "Does this mean you're really my dad now?" Mark smiled. I always was. We didn't invite my parents to the courthouse. A week later my mother left a voicemail. You're tearing this family apart, she said. One day Caleb will want to know his real roots. I deleted it. Because roots are not just biology. They're where you're safe. Where you're chosen. Choosing Mark meant losing my parents. It meant holidays would be smaller. It meant silence where there used to be obligation. But it also meant my son would never again stand at the edge of a photo wondering if he belonged. Sometimes you have to make a choice that feels like destruction in the moment to avoid a much bigger mistake later. It hurts. Change is everything. But the choices that protect your child shape your future more than the ones that protect your pride.